All right, let's dive in. This time we're tackling magical entities, specifically how they're created in the world of chaos magic.
Sounds intense.
It is. We've got Creating Magical Entities by David Michael Cunningham, Taylor Elwood, and Amanda R. Wagner.
Oh, that's a classic.
It really digs into how these thought forms are, well, thought up, designed, brought to life even.
It's almost like they become less abstract, when you give them form. Like a bridge from thought to something more real.
Exactly. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's define our terms. What exactly is a magical entity?
The book defines it as a vital principle.
Okay.
Hold on, there's more. It gives life to an immaterial essence, which has been created to have a self-contained and distinct existence, with a conceptual reality, all by personifying segregated thoughts and emotions.
Whoa, that's a mouthful. Can we maybe unpack that a bit for those of us who haven't spent decades steeped in this stuff?
Sure. Think of it this way. You've got a goal. Let's say getting better at public speaking.
Okay, relatable.
Right. So you take that goal, that abstract desire, and you pump it full of energy. Give it a personality even. That's essentially your magical entity.
So it's like focused energy with a purpose.
Exactly. And this idea, it's not new. The authors even connect it to the creation of, gods and goddesses throughout history.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right. These deities, they started as thoughts, as concepts, but then, through belief and devotion, they gained power.
So we're doing something similar, but on a smaller, more personal scale.
You got it. It's taking that same creative power, but directing it towards our own specific needs.
Okay, that makes sense. So we kind of get what these entities are, but WHY create one. What's the point?
Well, you wouldn't use a screwdriver to hammer in a nail.
Hopefully not.
Same idea here. In chaos magic, you wouldn't use a generic spell for every situation. Creating an entity, it's about customizing your magic for a specific need.
Like a tailored magical solution.
Exactly. Precision and focus. It's like having this dedicated energy force working towards your goal, even when you're not actively thinking about it.
Okay, I'm starting to see the appeal. Now, when I think magical entity, I picture things like familiars. Like a witch's black cat.
Yeah, that's a common image.
But is that accurate? Are those the only kinds of entities out there?
Not at all. Familiars are just one type. The book covers entities for gathering information, teaching skills, influencing events, even healing. The possibilities are pretty wide open.
So it's not just about having a cool magical pet. It's about creating a tool to help you achieve something.
Precisely. And the creativity in designing them is amazing. Like being a magical architect, building something from scratch, using energy and symbolism and intention.
That sounds pretty daunting, honestly.
Right.
Where do you even begin with that?
Well, the book emphasizes having a clear plan. Like an architect wouldn't build without blueprints, right? Same here. You need to define the entity's purpose and how it's structured before you bring it to life.
So step one is knowing what you want this entity to do, right? What's next?
You need to figure out its realm of influence. Like, what does it specialize in? Is it focused on creativity, finances, protection, that kind of thing?
So it's like choosing what department this entity works in, so to speak.
Exactly. Match the realm to your goal. And you can get super specific, too, tailoring it to your exact needs.
So if I wanted to, say, improve my writing skills, I'd create an entity whose realm is communication or creativity.
Right on. And then you could even refine it further to focus specifically on writing within that realm.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've got the goal, the realm. What else goes on this blueprint?
The authors talk about giving the entity a name. Apparently, even the name can impact its function.
Really?
Yeah. They suggest using numerology, matching the letters to numbers that symbolize specific qualities.
Whoa, so it's like encoding its purpose right into its identity.
Precisely. Then there's the appearance. What form does it take? What colors or symbols resonate with its purpose? It's all about conscious design.
And I read that some practitioners even pick out a housing object.
Oh yeah, that's a common practice. It could be anything from a talisman to a crystal, even a plant.
So it's like a physical home for the entity's energy.
Exactly. They suggest choosing something visually appealing, something that resonates with you. It helps build that connection.
Okay, so we've got the blueprint, the name, the look, even a place to live. But how do we actually bring this thing to life?
Now that's where the real magic starts. And that's a conversation for our next segment.
Ooh, you've definitely got me hooked. We'll be back after a quick break to dive into the nitty-gritty of how these entities are brought to life.
All right, we're back. Ready to actually give these entities some life.
Absolutely. I'm picturing a Frankenstein moment, but hopefully a little less dramatic.
Yeah, no lightning bolts required. It's all about charging the entity with energy. And the book covers a bunch of techniques for that.
Hit me with them. What's the secret sauce?
Well, they talk about visualization, rituals, even using things like blood or sexual fluids. They even connect it back to the golem from Jewish folklore, the one brought to life with earth, fire, water, air.
Okay, so tapping into those primal forces.
Exactly. But they're really clear that there's no one right way to do this. It's about finding what clicks for you, what aligns with your practice.
So some folks might be all about the visualization, others more into ritual stuff.
Yep. And some might work with symbolic representations instead. It's all about tailoring that energizing process to the entity you've designed and your own beliefs.
So it's like sculpting the energy to fit the mold you've created.
Perfectly put. It's where the artistry comes in, channeling your intention, your will, your energy into this thought form and giving it that spark.
Okay, I can dig that. But gotta admit, some of this stuff sounds pretty intense. Blood and sexual fluids, isn't that getting a bit messy?
It can be, and it's definitely not everyone's cup of tea. The authors acknowledge that these practices are often, misunderstood, sensationalized even.
Yeah, I can see that.
It's not about shock value, though. It's about tapping into those primal energies in a focused way, intentionally.
So respecting those energies, not just throwing them around willy-nilly.
Exactly. And it's just one example, too. There are tons of ways to energize an entity. It's all about finding what works best for you.
All right, fair enough. So let's say we've got this energized entity ready to roll. What next? Do we just sit back and let it do its thing?
Not quite. It's more of a collaboration, a partnership even. The book really stresses building a relationship with the entity, treating it with respect, understanding its nature.
So it's not about bossing around like, go fetch me a winning lottery ticket.
No, exactly. The authors describe it more like a dance. You and the entity learning to move together, understanding each other's rhythms and intentions.
I like that analogy. So how do we actually interact with it? Is it like mental chats, seances?
There are a lot of techniques, and it can vary depending on the entity's purpose and your tradition. They talk about invocation, calling upon its presence. Evocation, where you draw it into a specific space or object, even just straight up mental communication.
You can have a conversation with it in your head.
Yep. And they really stress clear communication. Like any relationship, misunderstandings can happen, so being specific about your needs and intentions is key.
Makes sense. Are there, examples in the book of people actually working with their entities? I'd love to hear about some real-world applications.
Oh, yeah. They've got some fascinating case studies in there. Want to hear a couple?
Absolutely. Real-life examples are always the best way to grasp these things. Okay, so real talk. After all this, I'm still kind of nervous about messing things up.
That's normal. It's like learning to handle any powerful tool. You want to be careful, right?
Exactly. So what can go wrong here? What should we watch out for with entity work?
The book really emphasizes unintended consequences. You're working with forces that can have ripple effects, like you throw a stone in a pond.
The ripples go further than you expect.
Exactly. Even with good intentions, things can go sideways. Amanda, one of the authors, she even shares a story about how an entity she created accidentally caused problems for a friend.
Oh, wow. That's a little scary. So how do we avoid that?
They really stress planning and foresight. Even recommend using divination to see potential risks and benefits before creating an entity, like a risk assessment for magic, I guess.
Okay, that makes sense. But let's say we've done all that, created responsibly. Anything else to be careful about?
Definitely. Boundaries are super important. You're building a partnership, not a dictatorship.
So no trying to control them completely or treating them like magical slaves.
Nope. Respect is key. They caution against forcing entities to do things against their nature or micromanaging everything.
Makes sense. A healthy partnership needs give and take, right?
Totally. And remember, they're drawing energy from somewhere. Got to make sure that exchange is balanced, sustainable.
Otherwise, we end up drained.
Yeah.
Or worse, dependent on the entity.
That's a real risk. The book even talks about entities becoming parasitic if they don't have a proper outlet for their energy.
Okay, now that IS. Scary. How do we prevent that?
They suggest giving them alternate energy sources, offerings, specific tasks, even setting a lifespan for them, giving them a clear purpose and a healthy outlet for their abilities.
So responsible stewardship. making sure we're both thriving in this partnership. What about ending it, though? Do we need to think about that?
Oh yeah, they're big on having an exit strategy. You need to know how to dissolve or unbind an entity if needed.
So it's not a forever thing. We can release them when their purpose is fulfilled.
Exactly. And they give techniques to do it responsibly so the entity doesn't linger or cause unintended harm, like completing the cycle, releasing the energy back to the universe.
This has been a wild ride. I went from feeling totally overwhelmed to actually, understanding this stuff. It was powerful, but definitely not to be taken lightly.
I'm with you on that. Requires respect, careful consideration, and a willingness to learn. But for those who approach it right, it can be really rewarding, truly transformative even.
So if anyone listening is interested in entity creation, do your research, be respectful, and remember, you're not alone. There are resources, communities, people who can guide you.
And as always, keep questioning, keep learning, keep exploring this amazing world of magic and the power of intention.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into magical entities. Until next time, stay curious and keep those intentions aligned.